G'day, my fellow media collectors. I'm Troy, and this is the Comic Book Movie Collector's Guide. And today we are looking at my guide to collecting comic book and superhero cinema and see what counts as a superhero movie and what doesn't. So, what do you say we get into it? So this video is one that I have wanted to do for a while now, and look, I get asked a lot, well, let's say on a very regular basis over these last 4 years now, does this movie count as a comic book movie? Or why don't you have this in your collection? It was in a comic book, etc, etc. And look, I do my best to explain to the people why some things count, why some things don't. Now, before we go any further,
we have to show you this disclaimer.
Okay, look, this is by no means the be-all and end-all of rules for collecting superhero cinema. These are just my rules that I have created over time, that I've created my collection by. And by all means, you collect your collection the way you want to. These are just my suggestions and my criteria that I've put my collection together with. But because, look, I get asked this on such a regular basis, you'd be surprised how many times I get asked what I think count and what I think doesn't count. This is why I've put this together, to potentially help people out there with their collections and hopefully help them decide on what to have in their collection, or what is a comic book movie, or what is a superhero movie, and what they can have in their collection. So how did I come up with these rules? Well, truth be told, when I first started researching and putting my collection list together, I came across this website, Flights, Tights and Movie Nights, and he had a list of superhero movies, and he kind of had this list of criteria for what counted and what didn't. Now, I have to say, I did agree with most of it, honestly. I agreed with most of what he had on his list. But yes, some of his criteria, I didn't quite sync up with it. But it is a major source of the basing of my collection. But like I said, we do differ a little on this and that. And I did modify the list to what my collection goals are.
Only the biggest ever.
So with that, I will run you through what my criteria is for collecting, and then go through some of the popular questions I get asked about certain properties out there on a regular basis, to hopefully help you decide if you want to put it in your collection or not.
So please continue.
So for me, when I started collecting, my primary goal was to collect every superhero and comic book based related physical media item out there, which includes movies, TV movies, animated movies, feature-length standalone pilots, foreign films, anime movies, movie serials, TV series, cartoons, short films, and anime TV series, as well as documentaries and anything related to superheroes and comic book culture. And I do have two exclusions to the rules. So, number one, no fan films, only official sanctioned productions or authorized by the content creators. And two, no bootlegs or unauthorized releases of content. I only have official releases.
Oh, sorry, I should clarify.
I know a lot of my regular viewers will be like, hey, but you have bootlegs in your collection. Yeah, I do. And that is true. And that is, let's just say, these bootlegs are there just as placeholders until an official release is made. So, look, I do count a bootleg if there is no official release to buy. Otherwise, if there is an official release out there and you have a bootleg of that, then to me that doesn't count, because you can buy a copy of it. So it has to be an official release to count.
Could you give me an example?
Okay, so quick example. This is a bootleg of Falcon and Winter Soldier, which I've had, which some of you, if you've seen my collection, I've counted that as that, but that we didn't know at the time when I bought this that they were going to release a proper thing. But they did, and I've picked it up. So now that I have a proper release, this one, that one can go down, and then that one counts. So yeah, if you do have a bootleg and there's nothing released, well then that's fine. But until they come up with a proper, then that bootleg's got to go.
Now that makes much more sense.
So what is the criteria for a comic book or superhero piece of cinema or physical media? Well, it should fall into one of two categories as per these guidelines I use. Comic book cinema. So first off, the main character or characters has its origins in a comic book, graphic novel, or serialized comic strip that has been published. Two, the film's specific story, production design, and or interpretation of the characters were based on a specific comic book or graphic novel, e.g. the 300 or Hercules, the 2014 version. Next one, the characters did not originate in a novel, non-serialized comic strip, mythology, or folklore, though it still could count as a superhero movie, which we'll have a look at later. The story is set in the real world and has a heavy focus on comic books, comic book culture, or comic book characters. Example, documentaries and things like that. Superhero cinema. So this is where the film contains one or many of these factors. The protagonist originated in a comic book or a graphic novel. The hero has, obviously, superpowers, super abilities, or gadgets beyond normal human capabilities. Example, superpowers, of course. Next, the hero wears a costume and or a hero's identity is that separate from his regular identity. Example, Batman, Bruce Wayne. The hero and or villain are theatrical in their heroics and or crimes. That is a little vague, but you kind of get the idea. So look, there you have it. That is how I dictate what goes into my collection and what doesn't. Now, I will give you some examples now of what counts and what doesn't. And these ones that I'm about to give you now are ones that I don't know. Look, I've been asked a dozen times or more over these last years, and these are probably the more popular ones, shall we say. So with a bit of this, hopefully this will help you with these sort of guidelines that I've just set out. Hopefully you will see how to decide what you want to have in your collection and what you don't think fits. So first off is probably the most common question of all. Yep, this bad boy, G.I. Joe. And as you know, I'm a big G.I. Joe fan. And I have got pretty much everything G.I. Joe's released on DVD, just over there in the corner. So, look, if I was looking to bump my numbers up, I'd put it in. But it fails to get in. And everyone's like, but it was a comic book. Yes, it was a comic book, but unfortunately, it was a toy line first. And it was popularized by that. And I think it might have hit this original cartoon was first before the comic was released. Don't quote me on that part, but even still, it was a toy line first. Wasn't no origins in comic books, and initially there was a comic book release after. So technically, sorry, this one doesn't count. Okay, this leads me on to the next one that I get asked about a lot, and that is, and you know, Masters of the Universe. Yes, you know me, mad Master of the Universe fan, and as much as I'd love to put this in, and I have everything that's been released by Master of the Universe as well, I can't put it in because this was a toy line first before the comics. So yeah, this unfortunately, as much as I'd love to put this in, I can't. And this sort of pertains to a couple of others too that I get asked as well, which is Transformers and Marshall Bravestar. Same type of thing. Toy line first before any sort of comics or any of that type of stuff. So, yeah, unfortunately, as much as they might kind of fit in, I'm afraid they sort of fail the test. So, Master Universe, sorry, it's not in. Okay, another one I get asked about a lot, and people are like, hang on, why isn't that? Anyway, so I'll explain it. And that's Conan. And I am a huge Conan fan as well. I know I'm a huge fan of everything, but yeah, I am a huge Conan fan. Love Conan for years. And I'd love to put it in. I've got just about everything Conan as well, but can't put it in. Why? Because Conan originated in novels and pulp magazines back in the, oh God, was it 30s or 40s? I'm not 100% sure, but was then adapted in 1952 to a comic. So unfortunately, nah, he was in something else first before he originated in comics. But this is another tricky one. Red Sonja, who was in Conan, she actually qualifies. So yes, Red Sonja actually qualifies. And you'll be like, well, hang on a minute, why does she qualify? Well, she was created by Marvel in the comics back in 1973. She wasn't in the original novels or pulp magazines. She was created by Marvel for the comics to have that female antagonist, like, you know, the sort of op-ended. And it was like, so yeah, so Red Sonja counts. Conan. So next couple, I've had a few people ask about this too, and that is Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers. Now, funnily enough, as you know how like when Marvel comes up with something, DC has a copy or vice versa. This is kind of the same. So I believe Buck Rogers was first. He was initially a comic strip for a rival newspaper or something. Then someone created a Flash Gordon, which is kind of a copy. And even though they're sci-fi, both of them, their origins are from 1934, around the same time as, like they both appeared around the same time in 1930s in comic strip form. So Buck Rogers counts, and Flash Gordon counts. Okay, another one that people ask me about is a Zoro. Now, this is a tricky one, and it can come down to interpretation sometimes, I suppose. But like Conan, he appeared in pulp magazines first. Yes, that is true. And he is probably considered one of the earliest definitions of, not necessarily a superhero, but the definition is a masked vigilante that defends the right of the people. So technically, he's kind of the first Batman. And if I'm not mistaken, he's the origins or the inspiration Batman is from what I remember. So yeah, so technically, vigilante defends people. That's a superhero trait, has a disguise, has a different thing. So he fits the superhero criteria, which means, yep, Zoro counts. Okay, next one I get asked as well is Tarzan. Now, Tarzan, similar to Zoro in a similar type of sense. He appeared in a book way back in the early 1900s, before he ever got adapted to comic books or anything like that. Yes, so he's a literature character, but the general consensus is too that he's potentially, how can I put it? He's potentially the first superhero. Now, hear me out on this, as he's a guy who ends up having superhero strength and animal reflexes from living with apes, making him better. And of course, his adventures are always about helping people and this type of stuff, fighting bad guys, doing the general superhero type sort of thing. So yeah, from what I've read, as far as literature is concerned, he is potentially considered the original superhero in that sense. So does Tarzan count? Does for me. Another one I do get asked about, yep, that's right, the good old Lone Ranger. Now, he first appeared on a radio show back in the day before he was transferred to TV, and then of course books, comics, all that type of stuff after that. It was a bit of a hit on the radio, and that's what brought it to the TV, which is, I think, this series here. So what does he fall under? Well, he is very Zorro-like in the sense that he's almost like Zorro, but he's the American version of Zorro, where Zorro was, Latino-based. He is American-based. So it's the same type of, he has a mask, he's a vigilante, and he defends the people with a secret identity. So he falls under that. He's one of those early vigilante heroes. So does the Lone Ranger count? Yes, he does. Okay, another one I get asked, and this one tricks people a lot, and unless you're in the know, a lot of people call foul on it, but I'll explain it to you. So this is, yes, Aliens versus Predator, and of course I can see you now going, but they're movies. Yes, they are. Predator, Aliens, both appeared in movies. But why do these two movies qualify? Well, Dark Horse being what they were, they loved their licenses, and they had got the license to Aliens and Predator to put in comic books. So you're like, well, that still doesn't qualify. Yes, it doesn't qualify just yet. But why do these movies count? Is because the comics they were in, the Aliens versus Predator, these are based off those comic books. So technically, yes, they are both, these characters originated somewhere else, but these movies are based off the comic books they appeared in. So they count. To give you an example, another example I thought of that would count if it happened, Dark Horse had the license to Terminator and RoboCop, and I think there was a Terminator versus RoboCop, same deal. These were movie characters, but if they ever made a movie where Terminator versus RoboCop in the same fashion as this, then that would count because it's based off the comic. So, yep, these ones count. Next one, I've been asked a couple of times about these ones as well, and that is RoboCop and Inspector Gadget. Funnily enough, I know they sound like two different ones, but then I kind of thought they were very similar in a sense. Is that I would class these both as more sci-fi cop entries than superhero entries. Look, you could debate this, I suppose, and don't get me wrong, I've got all the RoboCop stuff, which I would love to put in, but it just, to me, it doesn't qualify. It wasn't based on a comic book. He does not necessarily have superhero aspects, and when you look at the criteria, he doesn't quite meet that. And I really definitely put that in more of a sci-fi type of area. Same with Inspector Gadget. Someone actually asked me, does Inspector Gadget count? And I was like, oh, look, you could make a kind of a case, but I think he's along the same lines too. But when it comes to these pair, I'll leave that up to you. But for me, it doesn't count. Another couple I've been asked, and I have one but not the other, is Ben 10 and Max Steel. And from the research I've done, both of them qualify as sci-fi superheroes. Granted, neither one actually appeared in any comic books beforehand. They were both created and made for TV. But they're also very similar in origins, about a young kid who gets a power suit. But yeah, anyway, they're very similar. But they both qualify as sci-fi superheroes, as they come along with special superpowers and save the day battling evil to save the earth. So yes, Ben 10 and Max Steel, they qualify. So look, there you have it. My rules for collecting superhero cinema. Hopefully this helps you on your collection journey. And look, let me say again, this is not a be all and end all of rules. Don't, have a go at me about it. These are just some, like I like to think of some helpful guidelines that I've put together to help you with your superhero collection. Now, look, if I've missed anything, by all means, get down in the comments and let me know. Or if you've got a question about one, do you think it qualifies and you'd love to chat it over and we can work out whether it does or not, by all means, get down there and tell me what you think should qualify or what you think doesn't. I'm more than happy to put the research in for you and hopefully get you an answer. So yes, hopefully this will help you in your collecting. Hey, so if you like this and you want to see some of my collection updates, why don't you click that one there? Maybe you want to see some of my reviews. Got you covered too. Why don't you click that one there? And of course, don't forget to do the most important thing. Throw me a like and don't forget to hit that subscription button on the way out. Thanks again for watching and I'll see you next time.